pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes as presented?
No?
Nope. All right. Accepted as presented. Open forum. At this time, we'd like to give our district residents an opportunity to ask any questions about this agenda or about the operations within the school district. Personnel matters will not be addressed in public session. Comments will be recorded and responded to by the Board of Education or the superintendent within a 24 to 48-hour time span. We ask that you introduce yourself to the Board of Education and that you keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. Time's up. Moving along. There's another opportunity at the end of the meeting. Agenda changes. None. Okay. Moving to committee reports then. The policy committee. The second reading and motion for a second reading and adoption of the board policies as presented below. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education for the Trumansburg Central School District hereby approves the second reading and adoption of the board policies.
So moved.
And a second? Second. Okay. Can we just maybe have a quick review of each or questions by the committee? Or?
It was basically the same thing that we presented last time. The only changes that were made were more to language. Nothing substantive in terms of a change in the actual policy itself.
Okay.
So it gave us a chance. I'm sorry. The only difference was with the smoking tobacco use. They also included the
E-cigarettes.
The e-cigarettes.
Thank you.
Whatever they are.
Thank you for adding that language.
Chewing tobacco, any tobacco related or faux tobacco.
Elegant.
Did we have issues with e-cigarettes in school?
I actually have had problems with adults at events and like spectators at games and things like that, walking right down the middle of the hallway at the high school,
Halloween parade.
smoking e-cigarettes, not thinking anything of it. Because they're not really smoking. It doesn't matter, we don't do that here. So, thank you for making the policy.
Outdated session. Reflect new technology.
Right, that stuff's supposed to be worse than actual tobacco.
It is.
Okay. And anything other than that, unless anybody has any questions, that's pretty much the same as we did last meeting.
Any other questions? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Yep. We'll come back to facilities because we're expecting Hunt to present tonight. So, food service committee?
Okay.
Douglas?
We had a brief but very pleasant meeting. I guess I'll start, and if you guys want to join in. It sounds as if the school's been off to a great start. We've further reduced the amount of sugared cereals and such kids are eating, which is a great thing. Soup every day, a new soup, and some go, some don't. That's just always been that way as far as I can remember. We're, I think, doing pretty well financially, or better than we have in the past anyway. And to my great delight, we're using far more local, or I shouldn't say far more because we're restricted as to how much money we can spend on local vendors, but many of our natural farms and such, produce from them rather than getting everything from the government or other distributors.
Any other additions or comments? That it, Douglas?
Yeah, that is it, except I did want to mention, I guess this surprised me, that they have stopped the grab-and-go programs at, I think they were doing that at the breakfast programs at the elementary and middle schools. Those have been discontinued. Am I correct? Yeah. Great.
Great, thank you. And Community Engagement Committee report?
She's not here.
So-
Oh, but.
It went well. We discussed other ways to get the community more involved with the school and the board. We talked about having, I forgot what they're called, rack cards available for students or for new enrollment, and perhaps talking to the Trumansburg Community Recreation Center about having some of our recreational type items from school on the school website available for the public to see. And that was a lot of our thoughts.
We got Michelle's notes from last year. We see those as well.
Any questions?
Tina, did you give them that cash for old photographs that you took? No. Give them to, I think that the community engagement, that would certainly engage. Tina found a whole pile of old black and white photographs. And as we're flipping through them, I'm going, oh my God, that's not it. We graduated 20 years ago. These are old. But it would be kind of, I think, kind of fun to put them up on the website, or at least to be able to.
Facebook page, I thought people could find it out.
Right, and just something, can you find yourself?
Send them to our kids.
Right.
We're only age 18, so we can post away.
That's right.
Yeah.
We don't need consent.
And they're decent photographs, a lot of them are timelines. So they come from various other different concerts or plays or sporting events. So it's just fun going through them.
That'd be great.
Really would.
Yeah. In fact, we may recognize ourselves occasionally. God, was I ever that young?
Well, good, great, thank you. We'll look forward to that. Douglas, BOCES, or?
Yeah. BOCES. We had an excellent early presentation. We always have a presentation before the meeting, then dinner, and then the meeting, from Barry Durfel on how teachers at BOCES are now working on assessments that are truly, really and truly individualized. And if any of the rest of you know about this and can help me out here, that would be fine, because I may go into the weeds a bit. They truly reflect what each student's strengths and weaknesses are. And based on the results, they design an individualized curriculum which matches each student's strength and weaknesses. It's very tough. It's a hard process in which to go through, and they're learning as they go along. But they're committed to doing this and making sure that each child truly does have a full. Yeah, I know.
Is this the career and tech students or
No,
special
everybody.
program?
Absolutely everyone. So all of the teachers are all working on it together. Eventually, they do plan on reporting to us. And in addition, I forgot to write this down, but they will be beginning the tours that they promised they would make each district with some permitted photographs of our kids doing whatever it is they do all day, so that we do become more familiar with the programming there. And I guess I'm going to interrupt myself and say, before I forget, this Wednesday at 6 o'clock is the, I keep wanting to call it heroin, but that's not the case, the mental health issues at through CNY at BOCES. And I wanted to remind you, those of you who have registered, that will be in the Smith Building, and they usually have students from the from one of the programs available to show you where to park. But just for your information, the cafeteria, you know where the cafeteria is that we normally go to for the annual dinner. It's at the opposite end of the building, and in the same, basically the same safety space. So it's on the left side. So, okay. We have also reapplied for a BOCES Y Tech initiative, similar to the one we did over the summer that was not granted. This time, the grant will focus on two at-need students from each of our component districts, and hopefully we'll qualify for this one. The BOCES Executive Board. Our guest speaker last week was Lavelle Brown, the Ithaca Superintendent. He was absolutely amazing, as always. He spoke on his efforts to raise performance of the underprivileged students throughout all of the Ithaca schools. When he first arrived in the district, there was a striking correlation between socioeconomic class, race, general performance, and graduation. And it was pretty dramatic. I think they had a very minimum number of students of need graduating. It was pretty sad. By encouraging all students to participate in after-school sports, music, or a club of some sort, and providing after-school transportation, students from all socioeconomic classes are now participating in band, chorus, and all sports, not to mention a number of other programs such as a makers clubs and that sort of thing. And I think he's been there 10 years. Maybe someone can correct me, but I think it's been around 10 years. Over his tenure as a superintendent, the number of students taking advantage of after-school opportunities has tripled. And at one point in time, only a very limited number of students of color or students living in poverty graduated from high school at all. 2 weeks ago at the high school chorus presentation, they wound up having to split the event into 3 sections because they could not get the entire chorus on the stage. It's been amazingly successful. The graduation rates have increased dramatically. It's very, very exciting to see this happen. They do offer late transportation after school. You look at me puzzled here.
Well, I was going to say, I'll talk to you about it afterwards. I got some questions, but
Oh, okay.
we can talk about it afterwards.
Okay.
Be curious.
Great. So anyway, that was going well. And I think that's about it.
Questions for Douglas?
Or they can be asked here, I would imagine.
Are we ready for Hunt, or? So the facilities committee met last Thursday, and out of that robust discussion. Sure. Okay.
So Jeff Robbins is here to present to us tonight from Architects and Engineers. Apologies for my voice. To put a frame around facilities committee work, I'd like to remind everyone that we began this work in May of 2016 when the district began a facilities use study with an advisory committee comprised of various members of the school community. We took a proactive approach to look into future building use and create a thoughtful roadmap of how Trumansburg might educationally and fiscally reconfigure or maintain facilities to provide a sound instructional program both presently and in the future. From that work came 2 project proposals, both of which were presented to the New York State Education Department for review and comment on aidability this fall. Jeff Robbins, like I said, is here this evening from Hunt. He'll provide a walkthrough of those 2 proposals. He'll talk to you about the instructional gains, the impact to local taxpayers, and the scope of each proposal. In December, the Board of Education will be asked to determine which project to move forward to a public referendum, likely to take place in March of 2018. Separately, it's important to note that the district will begin work to arrive at shared beliefs about learning and define a vision for learning that will carry us into the next 5 to 7 years. We are anticipating constant change and evolution in the years ahead in education. Our leadership team and the Board of Education have taken the opportunity to review the writing of Will Richardson and Bruce Dixon, the 10 Principles for Schools of Modern Learning. I'll let Jeff take it from there.
Okay, thank you. So the committee has done a lot of work over the last couple months in the school district in trying to evaluate the 2 options. So as a recap, we got option 5 and option 1. Option 5 essentially closed the middle school and built a new middle school between your elementary and high school and made it one campus. Okay. Option 1 was maintaining the 3 individual buildings and doing work in each building, largely centered around some renovation work and introducing the STEM program and having specific space for that. So we've kind of been in around those 2 ideas quite a bit, so I'm not going to spend a lot more time on those other than if you have questions, we can talk about them. What I'm going to show is the financial picture of those 2 ideas. Okay, so this was done by your financial advisor, Bertie Donegan office, okay, put this together. And this is in response to the information we got from SED in how they would aid those 2 options. So we presented both options to the state. They did their calculations. They got back to us the amount of building aid that they would qualify for. And there's a whole formula that's generated to get you to a dollar value. And that dollar value was used in generating this document. Now, this has a lot of information. The key thing here is going to be the, and excuse me, I just need to be at my computer on this. The red cells, okay? Anything that's in red is identifying work that will not receive building aid. So that means that work is 100% local share, okay? So what we're looking at right here, actually it jumped ahead on me, let me go back one. Okay, this is option 5, okay, and the total dollar value of that option was $38 million, okay, as a project size.
Jeff, can you increase the size of the font so that it's maybe a little easier?
It's a
just to
PDF. I
see?
can increase the size of the whole document.
Okay.
Some of it will go away, but
All
I can walk you through it.
Yep.
So, what essentially, the whole project's $38 million, $10.5 million, no state aid. So that $10.5 million means it needs to be totally raised locally by either reserve accounts or tax impact to the community. Okay. So the way that boils down is what's above here, and you have in this instance, it's one building. So the state evaluates the aid based on building. Okay, the number of buildings and whatnot. As one building, they look at the whole building as one unit, but then they look at space between elementary and secondary. They're aided at different levels. So essentially, secondary rooms, which would be grade 7 through 12, is aided at a higher level than elementary rooms, pre-K through 6. So you have to identify exactly how you're going to use all the classrooms to come up with that calculation. So that's why there's 2 columns here. And the elementary side is done here. And again, this gets kind of deep, but essentially there's different categories that receive aid. So you have renovation construction, addition construction, and then you have renovation incidental cost and addition incidental cost. So construction is kind of self-explanatory. It's like a renovation would be as if I'm going to come into this room, it's an existing space, and I'm going to renovate it. Okay, that's renovation cost, construction cost. The incidental part of that is architectural engineering fees, construction management fees, any testing, financial advisor, bonding costs, any of that sort of stuff is incidental. Now, for an addition, it's a separate category, and it's aided differently. So you have those same 2 buckets as construction and incidental. The other caveat is site work. Anything you do on the property goes into incidental. Okay, so if you're renovating a parking lot or a bus loop or a playing field, that's an incidental category cost. So on here, these highlighted categories here are this is construction cost of the aid and what the cost is, and then the net result. So what you see here is the addition column has an unaided portion. Okay? The renovation column here is green. You have extra capacity. You could actually do more renovation work here and have it be fully aided. But on the addition side, it's over the amount. Same thing for the secondary space. You can see the addition has a real high number that's unaided, and the renovation category still has some capacity available.
Could you read out those, the greens?
Yes,
They're very
so
obvious.
at this elementary, the green here is 5 million, and at secondary, it's 2.3.
Thank you.
Okay? And then incidental, same thing. I have my incidental additions are over the limit, and the incidental for renovation are under. This one is 1 million, and this one is 800,000. Round numbers. So essentially what that story says is that the state doesn't aid additions at a high enough level to cover the cost, the actual cost to build them. That's what this evaluation essentially shows you. And we've seen that over and over again. If a project, that's why you don't see a lot of new buildings being built in New York State, because the state just doesn't fund them at the level that it costs to build them, is the reality. So a lot of times when you're doing additions, there's oftentimes more renovation being done than additions. And again, it kind of helps balance out that unaided portion. In this option, there's so much additions to be done to close the middle school and bring it over here that it just, is really not cost effective is what we, well, I shouldn't say that so drastically because there's always a way. But what it boils down to is an unaided portion of 10.5. Okay, we'll come back to that in a minute. So on the, go back here. So on the other option that we were evaluating is option 1, which kept the 3 buildings open, and that's why I have 3 columns, because I had to evaluate each building independently. So you have the elementary, the middle, and the high school. And you can still see there's quite a bit of red still in this, and largely it's centered around the additions. Okay, still had some overages on that, but then this showed up. This was a little bit different. The middle school renovation cost exceeded the capacity available to you. Okay, so when that all boiled down, it boiled down to 4.3 million unaided for a total project cost of just under 27 million. So that was evaluated by your financial advisor also, and largely it's much better than the other financially. You have about 6 million less to raise locally, but still that's a big number. What that translated to is approximately, and I don't have this sheet unfortunately from the financial advisor, but it was about the option 5 at the 10 million was approximately a 9.5% tax impact. Okay, and this option 1 was approximately half of that, around a 5% tax impact. Okay, both pretty high numbers when you're talking to your public typically. Now, not every community has a problem stomaching that, but most do. That's a pretty high value. So I do have an example of what that means, but I only have it for the 5 option. So I'm going to go to the next page. I'll come back to that one. So that option, I'll look at this column right here. That was the 9%, okay, with a, wait a minute, yeah, with a local share, if you have STAR, okay, not senior, but regular STAR, $84 a year and $120 a year for no STAR, okay? So you're dealing with those kind of numbers.
Based on a $100,000 home.
Thank you very much. Based on a $100,000 home, right? So, then you do the calculation from there. If it's 200, it's double that. So the committee evaluated all of this and essentially didn't feel like that this was a direction that they could recommend to the board to move forward with. Essentially, it didn't seem to be financially feasible to do. So we went back to the drawing board and looked more at option 1 and how do we even make option 1 more affordable? Because option 1 at even at 400,000 unaided is pretty big number. right? So we went and looked at that. And believe me, this is a lot to take in, so I understand if you want to come back to some of this. So this option here looked at maximizing the aid categories, okay, the green boxes, making sure that we were staying within those categories as much as possible, and minimizing the red boxes. So you still see there's some red on here, but essentially they're much smaller numbers for a total of less than $1,855,000 of unaided at a $25 million project. So how'd we do that? Essentially what we did is we looked at the additions that were being proposed and reduced the square footage of them. And what the state basically says is they're going to give you a certain amount of money to build a classroom. And they don't care if that classroom's 1,000 square feet or 2,000 square feet. The amount of money they're going to give you for that classroom is the same. So you can see where we're headed. Instead of building a 2,000 square foot classroom, we're proposing building a 1,000 square foot classroom. So then it becomes more aidable because you reduce the construction cost in half, essentially.
Do you just want to say what the average classroom recommendation is?
Yes. So for secondary, well, any grade above kindergarten, the regulations state minimum size 770 square feet for a regular classroom. Now, that regulation was put in place in the 60s. Okay, so it's really pretty small for the way teaching is done today. So we typically like to see secondary classrooms at around 800, 850, and elementary classrooms around 900 to 1,000. That's the goal if you're building new. Now, can you teach in an elementary classroom in 770 square foot? Absolutely, but class size starts to matter. If you start having 24 students in that class or 26, that gets pretty tight. So you account for all of those types of things when you're looking at class size. But if we're building new space, and the new space that's being proposed here is for the STEM curriculum, those types of spaces, technology, science, the recommendation at the state level is 1,400 square feet. Okay, much bigger room. Even though they recommend 1,400 square feet, but the amount of aid they give you for that science room is the same as the amount of aid they give you for a 770 square foot English classroom. Doesn't make any sense. It's just the way it is. So they kind of figure that you build some smaller classrooms, some bigger classrooms, and it kind of comes out in the wash. But when you're not building a lot of new classrooms, it doesn't come out in the wash. It just doesn't average out. So anyway, what we did here is essentially look at that 2,000 square foot STEM room and cut it back to more like 1,000, 1,500 square feet and use some of the existing building, renovate some other areas in the existing building to still be able to introduce that program and give you nice size, quality space. Okay, so that's what was done there. And the other thing is, like I mentioned at the middle school, we exceeded the renovation dollars by over $1 million in the other scheme. What we basically said is, okay, time out, we got to cut some of that. We're not going to go over on renovation cost in this proposal because it just doesn't work financially. So we cut that scope of work back a little bit to be able to keep within the limits that the state will aid you at this time. So that's what we did. Now, one more piece of information. The state resets their aid to you every 5 years. So it's a rolling aid ceiling, if you will. So if you spend your capacity to what they allow you to spend this year, 5 years from now you can apply for that again. So that's essentially why it's important to always be doing work and upgrading your buildings, because if you let them go too long, all of a sudden you have more work to do than what you can do within the ceiling the state gives you. So it's much better financially for school districts that keep doing regular projects, a little bit smaller projects that allow you to keep up on top of your work, okay? And it becomes more financially viable for the community. So essentially, we had them evaluate this idea, okay, which is, it's still option one, but it's kind of option 1B. All right, we took it a little bit further. It's $25 million, and it minimized the unaided portion. So they looked at what the tax impact of that would be, and I need you to look at this column here, okay? The tax impact is, well, the tax rate that would need to cover this is 0.44%. I don't know if rate's the right term. How do they use it? Local share, 0.44%. Well, you see underneath it, they say no additional tax impact. How's that possible? It's because you already are getting state aid for work that's coming in, and the district has capital reserves set aside and some fund balance that can offset this debt. So it can swallow that at a 0.44% versus we were looking at numbers of 5% and 9%. You know, you still had a local share. At 0.44, the local resources that you already have in place can cover that added cost. And essentially, it boils down to no additional taxes to your taxpayers to do this project. And so, of course, as we look at this, okay, what's the magic number? How much renovation work can we do and stay under that limit and stay under the aid cap and all that? We looked at that in a couple options. 25 million is the magic number, is where it all boils down. We looked at 22 million, 23 million, 25 is the magic number. If you went to 26, 27, you would have a tax impact. Okay, so that's kind of where that boils down. Now, what I can do next is I'm prepared to show you what the scope of work is for that 25 million, what's actually in that. But before I do that, is there any questions that anybody has that you'd like to ask at this time? Okay. All right, well, we can come back if there is. I'll go to the next part of the presentation. Okay, so what we're looking at here is it's building by building. So this is the elementary building. Let's see, I think I can come over here. So, and the way I broke this down is the building condition survey work. Okay, and one of the things I'll say is out of that 25 million, 90% of that work is from your building condition survey and renovation work. So there's only 10% of that, 2.5 million, is to accommodate additional space to renovate STEM rooms or to add STEM rooms to all three of your buildings. So largely it's being accommodating your building condition survey. I'll also say that your building condition survey done in 2015 identified $66 million worth of work, potential work. Out of that, priority ones were 14 million. And priority twos were around, I think, 20 million. So that we're right in that sweet spot between priority one and priority two, getting a lot of work accomplished in this proposal. Okay. So elementary work. This is work that's not shown on plans you'll see later. This is just picked off the BCS. So gym divider improvements, partial roof replacement. What that means is there's a section of the roof that is beyond its useful life and warranty. Ventilation, whenever we're doing a project, if there's existing spaces that don't have code required ventilation or not per the current standard, we got to bring them up to the current standard. Boiler replacement, which is kind of a big deal because that's going to come to its useful life here in the next year or two. Emergency lighting, fire alarm, smoke detection, master clock system, and auditorium curtain and rigging. The auditorium curtain and rigging has to be an alternate. When I got back into this, that was really only if money allows. That would be one of those things that would be on the edge. gonna let me read it from here. It's not.
Yes, it did.
Is it? Okay. Okay, now, shown on the plan for renovations and additions, you have the administrative office and entrance, secure entrance, support services, which is kind of a big deal. You have a lot of support services in inadequate spaces, art room renovations, the computer room and STEM renovations, pre-K additions and renovations. So the idea is the recommendations for pre-K and kindergarten is around 1,000 square feet. And your current space is not really quite adequate for that. And then STEM addition. So this is the plan, and it's small scale, but essentially the yellow is areas of the building would be renovated, like a complete gut and redo, and the blue is spaces that would be added to the building. So the 3 rooms off to the left are your pre-K rooms, and increasing the square footage of those and renovating them. The art room in the center, up in the middle towards the top is all the support services and office areas. And then down here by the library is the STEM suite, and part of that's additions and part of that's renovations. And across the hall would be support spaces. Okay, so that's the scope at the elementary building. At the middle school, essentially the BCS list is small other than what's in the renovated areas. So what you'll realize is a lot of the renovated areas are also on your BCS. So the big thing at the middle school is the heating system, is getting rid of the steam system. And in order to do that, we got to go through the whole building, deal with piping, terminal units, and the boiler replacement. Okay, so that takes up a lot of your renovation costs or your BCS items. And then, okay, like me there for a minute. There we go. And then, so the areas that would be, completely renovated is there's some office area support services, home and careers, gym locker rooms, the gym auditorium improvements, that's to create a presentation space on half of the gym. Kitchen cafeteria, complete renovation, the computer STEM renovations, and art and technology. Okay, so what that looks like in plan is, here's that part of the gym. It would be, developed for presentation space. Some of these are the locker rooms here, home and careers, some administrative spaces. And then largely it's in this wing here, where you have your art, technology, STEM, that would be totally gutted and reconfigured with some additions. And again, the additions need to be designed yet. This is kind of diagrammatic at this point. And then down below that, you have your cafeteria, kitchen, and part of that is, a lot of this is in your BCS also, identified as a need to fix that space up. So it kind of gets into it. And then up in this area here, on the second floor, there's some renovation work there for some classrooms and support spaces. Okay. Now we get into the high school, and the high school has some BCS items. Again, boiler replacement, common theme, just getting rid of the gym partition, some asbestos abatement, fire alarm work, emergency lighting, master clock system, locker replacement, and cafeteria flooring. There's a few more. There's some roof replacement, canopy at the main entrance, improved ventilation, some electrical upgrades, and then auditorium curtain rigging and lighting, I think, made the cut there too. And then for total renovation areas, it's secure entrance, library renovations, creating this resource learning center, fixing up that space, the health classroom area, technology, STEM, art, common theme, totally redoing that, fitness center renovations, and the girls' locker room. And that'll show better on the plan. I'll kind of go through that. So here's the library, the learning center. We've kind of flip-flopped the STEM and the art. And largely it's because technology and STEM seem to really go hand in hand, and having that larger space that's not divided by a corridor made sense at this time, and doing the art as the addition. and it could get more natural light and all that. And then over here, the key thing is to bring the girls' locker room and make that connection to the gym. Currently, it's outside of the gym, and it's a little bit awkward for how that's laid out. And then this girls' locker room will be renovated into the fitness center, and the adaptive cardio space that's being used here would come over here, and the fitness center would be, transition to that cardio space. And then there's one more component. There is some scope that we're proposing to offset some of this cost in your SMART bond act. So, the state set aside money for every school district to use for qualifying items that for SMART Schools Bond Act. And all these items qualify and would be proposed in that plan. That plan would come to you at a different time, and you would ultimately approve that prior to it going further. But these are the things that we see as helping out. Basically, STEM technology and equipment. And the reason I put that on there, remember the additions are aided to the full level. So what you can do to offset that is the technology components within the addition you can purchase through the Smart Bond money or app. So you can, you're building this new STEM room and you want some, specialized equipment or technology in there, you can offset that cost by using these funds on that. So that's what we're proposing there. Same with the pre-K additions. Any unaided portion of that could be offset by this. And then other instructional technology throughout the district. Technology closet improvement. What this is basically where all the wires go, your equipment, your servers, your switches, you have all that stuff sitting in a closet, we call it a closet, but it's the brains to your building. And a lot of times that's an inadequate space. It's not bonded or grounded properly, not air conditioned properly, those kinds of things. So we like to make sure that those are taken care of. Some security improvements, the access control. Now, emergency generators is allowed for, Joe, you had asked me this question. It is allowed as long as it's serving the technology components. If you wanted to do more than that, it would have to be other funds. So we got to keep an eye on that. And then other technology cabling upgrades that might be needed. A lot of that's being taken care of elsewhere, but whatever's left. That's a lot. So, open up for questions.
Jeff, I don't remember seeing lockers in the middle school as part of the renovation.
You're right. And I pulled it.
Okay.
Because, just because the renovation dollars got really tight. I see that as one of those things that we could still have on here and identify it as funds allowed. It might have to be an alternate bid or something like that. But to redo the heating system in that building is such a big number that it swallows up most of the renovation dollars that are left. So, and keep it under the aid cap. So, if you realize savings, during bidding, that's an easy item that we can include as you go out and you talk about, that as funds allow, and put it in as an alternate and try to get that done.
So we can't pool all of this building renovation money and then just sort of separate it back out as we would like it. Because certainly on the surface, there seems to be a far greater need for lockers in the middle school than in the high school. But it's because we've used up the renovation money in the middle school, and we can't pool it all and sort of repurpose it.
Right.
Okay.
But I say but there because this is really early on.
Yeah.
These are budget numbers and projections. When you get into an approved project and you're designing, we can plug in some alternates, try to make sure, but we always have to keep an eye on the financial picture and make sure we don't exceed those caps.
Okay.
But as long as you don't, and we have the language right to allow you to do some of that additional work. Yeah. Largely what I like to do is put language in that, other priority BCS items as funds allow. right? Because you've already gone through that process of identifying items in your BCS, and if the funds allow, that's where you would go first. You know, so.
You had mentioned earlier about a 5-year time span that the state allows. Is that tied to our BCS report, or is it tied to when we do a project?
It's tied to when you're doing a project, and it's specifically tied to the date of your building permit. So it goes from building permit date to building permit date. So right now, most of your past projects are coming off the books, except for your annual projects. You've done some capital outlay projects, you know, $100,000 projects, they're still on the books, so it reduces that by those amounts. But your large projects have come off the books, or will have come off the books by the time we're doing this.
Question, in regard to the auditorium curtains and rigging,
Yeah.
is that done by a formula by the state that basically says every X number of years this needs to be replaced, or is that actually done by somebody who took a look at the existing condition?
Somebody took a look at it. Yep. So
Who was it who took a look at it?
we had a consultant come here for some ABL designs who specialized in theatrical performance sound and acoustic equipment. So some of it is, you know, some of the rigging really needs some work. You know, you can buy some time on some of your lighting and some different things, but you know, it just becomes more and more difficult to run a show, is what it comes down to. And trying to simplify some of that, and I don't know, some of you that use it can probably talk
I was
more
going to say,
to
Jane,
it.
if you've been in on the high school stage, the ropes are very stretched, and there's a way that you can clean those up, but they're very worn, they're very old, and it's bordering on unsafe.
Yeah, did you ever talk to Bill Bielke?
Yeah,
Okay.
I've spent a lot of time with Bill and Ann.
Okay, yeah,
You know,
because granted that you had somebody professional coming in, but these are people who have worked on that stage, and Bill's an engineer anyway. So, I mean, I remember years ago that part of the problem we were dealing with the curtains, part of it is because they were never cleaned properly.
Mhm.
And one of the ways for them to really deteriorate is just dust eats away.
Well, there's the curtains. There's actually fire ratings on those, and they can be.
And they get reduced
They
over
get
years.
they get resurfaced every so many years, but then you get to a point where they can only be done. You can only do that so many times, and they're usable. I think Joe knows.
We're
that.
there on
Yeah.
both sides.
Yeah. My thing is that the state, like the rigging, the ropes and all of the stuff for flies and all that is not ideal for student use.
You don't want them being on the head with
No.
the lights.
We
No,
prefer
that's all part of
Yeah.
active theater, John. You know, you.
And as the designated light guy, the lights that we have in there need a lot of work, and we need to replace the lights too.
I can. What about the lights?
Mhm.
Jeff, who's the next building SPCS do?
It's every 5 years, and it's on the 5-year cycle, so 15, so 2020 will be the year that, and they allow the year before and the year after, kind of, so but 2020 essentially.
Coming up to 18.
Yeah, I know, right? It's amazing, it's coming up again, but yeah.
How much is left to be done?
Well, like I said, there was 66 million identified. And this project is at least 22 million is directly items that were on that BCS. So a third is would be taken care of this. You'd have 2/3 left. But not all those things were the highest priority. You know, when you go into it, the approach on the BCS is to really identify everything that you see or you can think of, because if it's not on there, you can't do the work. So, you know, it's not like we're trying to inflate it or something, but you want to make sure that if you have if something becomes a need, the first thing they say, did you identify it on your BCS? And if you didn't, then they're going to say, you didn't plan well enough, we're not giving you aid for that. You know, so we do try to get everything in there. So it's, you know, 66 million is a big number, but there are a lot of it that are high priority items, that need to be taken care of. So.
Other questions? Kimberly, where do we go from here in terms of our timeline?
So in December, we'll ask the board to make a decision about which project they would like to move forward to the public. The public would likely schedule a referendum for March, and then the public would vote whether or not to pass that project.
So what that looks like is December, it'd be nice for some feedback between now and December, so if there's any changes you want us to look at. But then in December, you'd essentially give us a thumbs up to say, yep, we want to pursue this option, and your intent to do that, okay? That allows us to start the seeker process. So seeker is the State Environmental Quality Review Act, and you have to go through that exercise before you officially adopt a proposition to go to vote, okay? So the December would be like, yep, we like where you're headed, let's go down this road. We would do the seeker, come back to you in January, and then you would have your official, I think late January meeting. You would do an official vote that says, yep, we're going to go to vote. This is the proposition language, this is the dollar value, and this is the date we're going to vote. And take your seeker action.
Between January and March, we would hold community forums where the public could give us feedback about that project, and we would provide in some of this detail, but also more detailed drawings specifically about what some of those space designs would look like.
So I don't believe we have a facilities committee meeting scheduled between now and December 12th, which I think is the next board scheduled board meeting at this.
Certainly, yeah.
But I think it would be good to add one so that whatever feedback the board wants to give to the facilities committee or to you, we can get that shared and those questions answered prior to the December meeting.
Great.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. And Dorothy, you wanted to wrap up also? Or you were saving your voice? Our student representative this evening is at play rehearsal, I understand. Mr. King, is there anything that you'd like to add on her behalf? Student report.
Sorry, student report, sorry.
Okay.
We were talking about facilities. So we've started, our winter sports season has begun. You'll start seeing games on the calendar coming up in the next few weeks. The big hot button topic is the fall play, which is the Brothers Grimm Spectacular-a-thon, which is going to be on December 2nd and December 3rd. That's Saturday. I believe it's a 7 p.m. show and I want to say 2 o'clock on Sunday, but don't hold me to that. They're going to be doing a preview for the high school as an assembly, and possibly the middle school, if I can twist the principal's arm a little bit, on Friday, December 1st. Very, very funny, great show. Strongly encourage everyone to come on out. That's the hot button stuff from the student perspective.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Moving to the consent agenda then, are there any items that members of the board would like to pull to address individually? Then, hearing none, motion for acceptance of the consent agenda as presented. Those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. That takes us to new business. May I have a motion for the acceptance of the following donation? Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education for the Trumansburg Central School District hereby accepts the donation of $1,385 from the Merry-Go-Round Playhouse to the elementary school for play performance at the elementary school. Motion? Okay, second? Second. Any questions or discussion? This has been a long-standing program with the Merry-Go-Round Playhouse, so we certainly appreciate their continued efforts to support our young artists. Amen. Those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. And then a motion for the tenure appointment of Jenna Stearns, be it resolved upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education for the Trumansburg Central School District hereby approves the tenure appointment for Jenna Stearns effective December 1st, 2017 in the area of special education.
So moved. Second.
Second, discussion?
What a great addition.
Yes, it was a great steal, and it's nice to see a former student return and help contribute back to the education that she received.
Say my 2 cents. It's not every day that you can build your team. And Jenna was one of the first people that I had the honor of hiring, and it's a decision I appreciate my hiring team and their input, because we have someone who is going to be, in my opinion, a lifer who just makes this district so much better. She goes miles and miles beyond her students and her team members that you just can't buy that. So, totally worth it. Thank you. for the tenure.
Any other questions or discussion? The motion to approve, those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Congratulations. Yes, congratulations. That brings us back to open forum. We have a few more people in the audience at this time, and we'd like to give district residents an opportunity to ask any questions about this agenda or operations within the school district. Personnel matters will not be addressed in public session. Comments will be recorded and responded to by the Board of Education or the superintendent within 24 to 48 hours. We ask that you would introduce yourself to the board and that you keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. More people, but still no. Oh, Mrs. DeSantis, thank you.
This is just a clarifying question. So I'm Laura DeSantis. I am I guess a community member and a teacher in the middle school. And I'm just taking notes, and I just wanted to clarify a few things. That's okay?
Sure.
Just 2 things. The first one was
Wouldn't you be
about-
shocked if we said no?
Well, you have things to do. Everybody wants to go home. The options 5 and 1 was when I don't remember
Jeff.
his name. When he gave us the cost to taxpayers being the $84 for STAR and the $120 for no STAR, was that for option 5 or the first option 1?
It's option 5.
5? Okay, that's what I thought. And then is the slides that he had where he detailed the different renovations, is that available somewhere? Because I couldn't type fast enough.
We can get that to the website.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's all I had.
All right.
Thanks.
Anyone else for the good of the order? Hearing no
Wait,
other
I got a
take-
question. I'm
Oh.
sorry. I should have raised my hand earlier. Is this like,
Would you like to introduce yourself, please?
oh, I'm Laura Hine. What else am I supposed to say?
I'm not sure.
Karen.
I just tossed one.
Thank you.
Because I wasn't
You're
sure.
welcome.
Physics class 6 already.
I have a question that doesn't have anything to do with anything that was covered today in the meeting. Is it still fair game?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So my question is about the proposed Hamilton Square development in Trumansburg, across potentially from the Historical Society. The idea that potentially there could be 200 plus new residents in this community with an influx conceivably of 50 to 70 K through 12 students. Not knowing if those students would be new students to the district or existing students that would be relocated into this new community. I'm wondering what the board and the district have done to look at the potential impact of having such a large number of students potentially enter into our school. If we can absorb those additional students into our classrooms, if we have enough staffing for that, or essentially how it's come to the board's attention and if it's been on an agenda at all.
I don't think it's been formally on an agenda, but we have had a number of discussions about that. And unless those 50 to 70 students were compressed into 1 or 2 grade levels, the district has more than enough capacity to be able to absorb those students At one time, we were a district of over 1,500 students. We're now a district of barely over 1,000. So we have reduced our student population by almost a third over the course of the last 15 years. So we certainly have the capacity to do that. If there were reasons that because of student need or concentration of population that we needed to look at additional staffing, then the board would certainly do that based upon the recommendation of the superintendent and the administrative team.
Okay, so we have enough additional capacity in terms of space, but we don't have necessarily the staffing or the...
Well, we don't know what the staffing might be, so if those 70 students were spread out over 12 grade levels, my guess is that we would probably not need any additional staffing. You're talking, you know.
How about a per pupil expenditure that's reimbursed both by the state but also then expected of the district to cover? Seeing that many of the residents here that would be part of Hamilton Square, and I realize I'm pushing on my 3 minutes, or 5, would not necessarily be contributing to the tax base.
Let me defer that question to either the superintendent or our business manager.
If we don't have a significant increase in staffing, which we're not likely to have because the students would be spread, our overall expenditures, they don't really, it's not a per unit expenditure increase, so to speak. So we don't see the operating costs increasing to any degree or anything of significance. And the state aid has been more or less non-functioning based on the student count in terms of reimbursements. So we're not likely to see any increases in state aid either. So on both sides, we're not likely to see any changes worth worrying about. And what is that? So I think we're in good shape, and most likely if they do come in, they'll be spread amongst and we'll be able to absorb, just like now if we were to absorb five in any grade level, we just maneuver.
At the elementary school this summer, we had 46 new students register.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
And we didn't increase, and we didn't increase staff, and we had 13 move out. So just to give you some idea of on a typical,
Thank you.
I'm Leslie Appel, I'm a parent, and I'm just trying to wrap my head around the whole facilities project. I had the privilege of being on the Facilities Advisory Committee, so I feel like I've seen this from the beginning through now. And,
Bless you for your patience and your contribution.
I guess what I want to say is it does make sense what he presented today, but it seems very focused on the amount of aid we can get. I think if there's something that our teachers and our principals and our board feels is really important for education, I would encourage the board to look at that and don't do it because we can't get the aid, see what it really is, and if it's truly important, as a taxpayer, I would contribute, I would not be upset to have my taxes raised to pay for something that really is essential. So, I just want to...
Thank you.
Although that was included in some of our earlier discussions. In other words, we look for input for as many people who would be impacted by it.
Right, and I've come to those meetings, but I'm saying these options are very pared down from the last presented options to the public. Right, and so what I'm saying as the public, as a parent, but also a community member, like the lockers are a small thing, but let's say the lockers were critical and they're
Right.
not in the budget, I think we shouldn't not do them just because we can't get the aid for them.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say a quick.
Would you be kind enough to...
Rose Hansen, I'm an employee and a parent. And I just want to thank the principals for their generosity and patience with the whole Big Apple Crunch thing. And I'm sure next year if we do it, I'll start sooner. And the people who won, the whole school lined up in the shape of an apple, and like they shot a picture from like a drone or something. So maybe next year. But thank you all very much. I appreciate your support.
Anyone else?
Foundation for the
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Board forum? Questions, comments? Anything you want to share? Then may I have a motion for executive session regarding the matters relating to the appointment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person, persons, or corporation? Second. We'll move to executive session. Thank you very much.